ערב שבת קודש, פרשת ויקרא, תשפ"ג. The Sefer Vayikrah was sponsored לעילוי נשמתו הטהורה של Mr. Charlie Saka, whose name was Yishaya ben Lora, זכר צדיק לברכה. Was donated by his children and grandchildren. Charlie, as I remember, he was a person that dedicated himself to Torah, and he helped a lot the community in increasing Jewish education and Torah, increasing learning Torah in the community. Ruach Hashem tenichenu began Eden, Amen. This week Parashat was sponsored by an anonymous Chavod, one of our best students in Yeshivat Moreshet Yerushalayim, that his wedding was yesterday, and it was sponsored for the Chavod wedding of Moshe and Roberta Dweck. Kadosh Baruch Hu will bless them, that they should be zoche lebinyan adei ad besimcha ubesason kol hayamim. Today we will speak about Parashat Vayikrah, what it has to do with the time, and also about Haggadah Shel Pesach, something that the boys wanted me to speak about. In this week's parasha, we are reading that on every korban that Am Yisrael used to sacrifice, they used to put salt. They used to salt the korban. This is written in Perek Bet, Pasuk Yud Gimel, Al kol korbancha takriv melach. And the question is, why do we need to salt the korban? What's the purpose for? We find, as far as I know about 3 reasons. One reason was said by the Ramban. The Ramban says that since every person, when he eats, he cannot eat meat without salt. It doesn't have any taste. And every food that he eats, you need something to put on. Usually they used to put salt. So it cannot be that a person will sacrifice to Borei Olam something that he himself will not enjoy. A person has to sacrifice to Borei Olam something that he himself enjoys to eat it. And this way, he has to sacrifice to Borei Olam the korban. This is being said by the Ramban. Everyone can look in the Ramban there. The Rabbeinu Bechaye, he added a little bit more. Here, first of all, he brought the opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam's opinion is very famous, that the Goyim at that time, they used to bring every korban, when they used to bring korbanot, they used to bring korbanot, sweetie korbanot. And they used to bring yeast with the korban. They used to bring honey with the korban. Therefore, and salt, they didn't bring, because the salt used to take out the blood out of the meat. And they are people that they wanted the blood. And therefore, says the Rambam, we are doing exactly the opposite. ככל שאור וכל דבש לא תקטירו ממנו איש אל השם. We don't bring no honey and no yeast to the korban. And from the other side, we bring salt on the korban. We put salt on the korban, opposite what the Goyim used to do. If you want, you can look in the Rambam in Moreh Nebuchim in Perek Gimel, in Chelek Gimel, Perek Mem Gimel. This was written in the Moreh Nebuchim. Another explanation was said by the Sefer HaChinuch, and the same thing, close to it, it is written also by Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. And they are saying that salt has a special characteristic. It keeps what we have. For instance, and though in those days, in order to keep fish long time, they used to salt it. In order to keep meat long time, they used to salt it. Salt causes the item not to change, to remain as is. And therefore, when a person brings a korban, I'm a little bit adding on what they are saying. When a person brings a korban, and the korban is a kapara on the person. And as if we are hinting him, now that the korban made you clean with no sin, so keep it. Keep yourself to be clean out of sin as is, as you are now. And this is what I wanted to say, the boys, that they left the yeshiva back to America, that whatever they learned in the yeshiva, salt it, keep it as salt, that will help you to keep the learning that you learned in the yeshiva, like a review on what you learned. And try to remember everything that you learned and to conduct according to whatever you learned in the yeshiva. The boys asked me about the question that we find in Agadah Shel Pesach, in the whole story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We find contradiction in the time that Am Yisrael stayed in Egypt. In Sefer Bereshit, in Perek Tetvav, Pasuk Gimel, the Pasuk says there, in Brit Ben HaBetarim, Borei Olam is saying to Abraham Avinu, ידוע תדע כי גר יהיה זרעך בארץ לא להם, ועבדום בעינו אותם 400 שנה. So we learn that Am Yisrael will have to be tortured as slaves and strangers for 400 years. From the other hand, we have a pasuk in Sefer Shmot, in Parashat Bo, in Perek Yud Bet, pasuk Mem, ומושב בני ישראל אשר ישבו במצרים 30 שנה ו400 שנה. So they stayed in Egypt 430 years. In Borei Olam said to Abraham Avinu 400, and here it says they stayed 430 years. And from the other hand, we know what Chazal are saying, that in fact they stayed in Egypt only 210 years. And the question is, how can we getting along with all these opinions that one contradicts the other? Before we will start to answer this, I want to tell you what we are doing in Leila Seder. In every Leila Seder, in the beginning of the Seder, we announce what year was Yetziat Mitzrayim and how many years are from Yetziat Mitzrayim till today. Yetziat Mitzrayim, it is written in the books Seder Adorot and in Seder Olam, also that Am Yisrael went out of Egypt 2,000 years and 448 years from Briat HaOlam. Bet Alafim Taf Memchet. Today we are 5,000 years. Taf Shin Pei Gimel. Means to say, nowadays, today is 5,773 years from Briat HaOlam. I'm taking an extract from it, the time, the year that Am Yisrael went out of Egypt. It was 2,448, so 5,783, sorry, 783. 83, and till today is 3,335 years from the time that we went out of Egypt. Now we will go to speak about all these numbers that we had. We see that Am Yisrael stayed in fact in Egypt 210 years, and yet now we find in the Mefarshim two reasons why the time became shorter. Why they stayed only 210, while it was said that they have to stay 400. Two main reasons. One reason is that the slavery, when Borei Olam decided that they would be slaves in Egypt, Borei Olam also made the calculation how many hours and how hard will be the work. But the Egyptians, they overworked with Am Yisrael, with the slaves, and Borei Olam reduced 190 years that only he can make this calculation to take hard work and to change it into time, into years. And this is what we are saying in Haggadah Shel Pesach, שהקדוש ברוך הוא, ברוך המקום ברוך הוא, שהקדוש ברוך הוא חישב את הקץ. בורא עולם, he calculated the time that the work will end. And he removed 190 years, and the Shibbolei HaLeket says that if you take the word Chishav et HaKetz, means he subtract the numerus of Ketz. Ketz is Kuf 100, Tzadik is 90, he removed 190 years. So 400 minus 190 is 210 years. And really, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Am Yisrael after 210 years, and he told them, you know what? This month, Chodesh Nisan, you are going to be redeemed. They didn't believe him. They said to him, Moshe, what are you talking about? We have another 190 years to stay. Borei Olam, says the Midrash, Borei Olam answered them, Moshe Rabbeinu answered them, when Borei Olam wants to redeem you, when he wants you to get free, he jumps on mountains. Means to say he jumps on the time, and he calculated the time according to his calculation. His calculation is not your calculation. He took in consideration all your sufferings, that you cannot calculate this suffering, how much it's worth. And therefore, Borei Olam took them out. They stayed in Egypt only 210 years. The Baal Tiferet Israel, he gives to it a hint in the matzah that we eat on Leil Seder. Am Yisrael had to stay in Egypt for 400 years. It was like the iron furnace for them. In other words, in my words, they had to be baked in Egypt for 400 years till they will be ready to become a nation and to accept the Torah. What is matzah? Matzah is really bread, but bread that was baked before time. And this is the same characteristic as Am Israel in Egypt. They had to be baked for 400 years. At the end, they were baked before, only 210 years. And this is like the matzah that has to be, that it prepared, means the dough is prepared to become chametz and to be baked after a certain time. And but since they baked it before time, it became a matzah. So we saw the first reason is because the Egyptians overworked with Am Israel, and therefore the time became shorter. Another explanation, how come only 210 years, is because this is being said by Rashi also in Chumash Bereshit and also in Sefer Shemot, that the time starts, the 400 years, the calculation of the 400 years are starting from the time that Yitzchak was born. Because Borei Olam said to Abraham in Brit Ben HaBetarim, Yadoa teda ki ger yeh zar'acha be'eretz lo lahem. So when is the time that Abraham Avinu had zar'acha? When Yitzchak was born. So from the time that Yitzchak was born, we are starting to count the 400 years. How we are getting to 400 years from the time that Yitzchak was born? We know that Yitzchak was 60 years when Yaakov was born. So we have already 60 years of Yitzchak. And when Yaakov Avinu came to Egypt, Paro asked him, how old are you? Yaakov Avinu said, I am 130 years. And 130 plus 60, we have already 190. So Yaakov Avinu came to Egypt after 190 years from the time that Yitzchak was born. If you add to it the 210 years that they stayed in Egypt, so we have 400 years. 400 years from the time that Yitzchak was born. Now the question is, why do we need two calculations? What was bad to say the first explanation or the second explanation, that you start to count from Yitzchak and that's it? Or because there was hard labor. We find two explanations. Why do we need both of them? They argue explanations, one with the other, or one completes the other? You will see that the two explanations, one completes the other. We saw the first reason was that the hard labor reduced the time. The second one was that we start to count from the time that Yitzchak was born. Borei Olam, he said to Abraham, Yadoa teda, ki ger yeh zaracha, they will be strangers, and avadum, they will be slaves, and they will be tortured while they will be slaves. The hard labor reduced the time of slavery because they overworked with them. So this reduced the slavery. Good. But how the time that they had to be strangers, that they have to be geirim, how this time became shorter. The hard labor reduced the time of working, of slavery, because Borei Olam said you will be slaves this way of work, and they overwork. But how can it be that the time that they stayed in Egypt, they had to stay there as strangers, became shorter? The answer is, for this came the other reason, that you start to count from the time that Yitzchak was born. Means to say that you include the time of the Avot in the calculation of the 400 years. And the question is here, how can it be that you start to count from Yitzchak the time that Am Yisrael were strangers, Geirim? Abraham lived most of his life in Eretz Israel. Yitzchak never left Eretz Israel. Yaakov, he lived in Eretz Israel 130 years. He stayed in Egypt only 17 years. He died when he was 147. So how can you say that they were Geirim, the Avot? You start the time of Geirut, of the being a stranger, from the time that Yitzchak was born. The Avot, all of them were in Eretz Israel. So what you're talking about Galut, about Geirut? Explain by Sefer HaChinuch in the introduction. And he explains, when Abraham Avinu said when Borei Olam said to Abraham Avinu, your children will be Geirim in Eretz Lo Lahem, when they will be strangers, Abraham Avinu started to suffer. And he felt that every step that he makes in Eretz Israel, he felt that he stays now in Galut, because he was so sorry for his children. And the same thing is Yitzchak, and the same thing is Yaakov. All the Avot felt, even though they lived in Eretz Israel, they had the feeling that they are not in Eretz Israel, they are not in Eretz Canaan. They are like Geirim. Okay? Comes out that since the Avot had the feeling that they are Geirim, because of this, the 400 are starting from the time that Abraham Avinu heard about this decree that they would be Geirim, and he felt the feeling that he is a stranger, even though he was in Eretz Israel. But who says that feeling is actuality? We find such a thing, such an idea, according to the Mefarshim, we find such an idea that the feeling of a stranger equals stranger. Even though he was not in Galut, it's considered as if he was in Galut. The feeling turns into actuality. Where do we find it? We find it in Masechet Makot, that a lot of boys learned this year in the yeshiva. We find the Gemara that every person who kills a man b'shogeg, by a mistake, he has to go to Ir Miklat, to Galut, to stay there till Kohen Gadol will die. Let us say person killed somebody by mistake and started the court, and in the middle of the court, let us say that the witnesses said to the judge that we saw that he killed this person by mistake, Kohen Gadol died. In this case, this fellow will have a tough luck. because neither will have to stay, this person will have to wait till the new Kohen Gadol will be anointed and will become a new Kohen Gadol, and he will have to stay a long time till all the years of the new Kohen Gadol. But, says the Gemara, what will be if the person was brought to court and the judge said already to the guy, Ruvain, you have to go to Ir Miklat, to Galut. And this is a decision of the Beit Din. Okay, Reuven took a cab and he started to go to Ir Miklat. On the way, they heard on the radio that Kohen Gadol passed away. Says the Gemara, this person will not go to Ir Miklat. He will not go to Ir Miklat. Why he will not go to Ir Miklat? Because he says the Meiri, the feeling that he had that the judge told him you have to go to Ir Miklat, it considered as if he stayed in Ir Miklat. From here, says the Mefarshim, we see that it says the Meiri, a feeling of getting into Ir Miklat equals as if he stayed in Ir Miklat, and he's exempt. And since the Kohen Gadol died after he heard that he has to be in Ir Miklat, and he had the feeling as if he's already there, he's exempt of Ir Miklat. And therefore, according to this, we can understand how come the Sefer HaChinuch said that Abraham Avinu heard that Am Yisrael, that his children are going to be in Ir Miklat, they are going to be in Ir Miklat, you start to count from the time that Yitzchak was born. Can understand? Feeling that Abraham had, the feeling of Yitzchak, the feeling of Yaakov, feeling as a stranger, is like as if he stayed in himself, they themselves stayed in Galut. This we learn from the Gemara, from the Meiri, in Gemara Masechet Makot. What remains to us to explain it, what is the 430 years? We know that Borei Olam appeared to Abraham Avinu, says Rashi, Abraham Avinu appeared to Abraham Avinu in Brit Bein HaBetarim when Abraham Avinu was 70 years. Yitzchak was born when he was 100 years. So from the time that Yitzchak was born, we start to count, it comes 400. But if we are starting to count from the time that Borei Olam said it to Abraham Avinu when he was 70 years, we will come to 430 years. And this what the Gemara, what the Torah said, ומושב בני ישראל אשר ישבו במצרים 30 שנה ו400 שנה, the pasuk says, ומושב בני ישראל אשר ישבו במצרים, to be strangers. And Abraham Avinu felt already a stranger from the moment that Borei Olam told it to him in Brit Bein HaBetarim. This was when he was 30 years old. And therefore, the pasuk said 430. So 400, we have two explanations. Either we start to count from Yitzchak, when Yitzchak was born, or because of Borei Olam removed the time because of they overworked. And the 430 we start to count from Brit Bein HaBetarim. In Yitzhak Hashem, next week we will continue to speak about Shabbat HaGadol, we will speak, and also we will speak about what we will be able to add to Pesach. And I want to wish everyone Birkat Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much to Yitzchak Dweck that established this shiur, and to Avram Shomer that took care that the shiur will be on time this Shabbat, and all the till now what he helped me and helped the boys in the yeshiva that they could be able to listen to the shiur. Shabbat shalom.